Every now and then a wrestler will come along that will defy everything you thought a wrestler could or should be. CM Punk never had it easy, and he never would. Growing up in Chicago, his family were never really there for him. His father would show up to his Little League games drunk to pick him up, throwing up on the car ride home. This scared a young CM Punk, making him wonder why anyone would ever do this to themselves. This, along with his parents not providing for him, was ammunition for Punk to make a change in his life. He would move in with his childhood friend Chaz and her family, and they would take him in as one of their own, becoming a sort of adopted brother to the family. In school, Punk would find it hard fitting in. This didn't bother Punk, however, because he would just find outcasts like himself to hang out with. One day in detention, he would be reading a magazine with the band Minor Threat on the cover. Punk would resonate strongly with this band due to their straight-edge beliefs. This straight-edge identity would define Punk for the rest of his life. While CM Punk resonated heavily with the straight-edge world, there was another world he found himself completely immersed in. CM Punk loved wrestling. His favorite wrestlers were Macho Man Randy Savage, Shawn Michaels, and Rowdy Roddy Piper. Punk would be influenced heavily by Rowdy Roddy Piper after seeing him hit Jimmy the Superfly Snuka over the head with a coconut. He saw this average-looking man standing up to these icons of wrestling in Hulk Hogan and Snuka, and thought if Piper can do this, then maybe I can as well. CM Punk and his friends would begin putting on backyard wrestling shows at their parents' houses, drawing a surprising amount of people to the events. These numbers would range from 200 to 1,000 people depending on the nights. Due to the success of these shows, they would eventually rent out a warehouse and start doing actual events there. These shows would come to be known as the Lunatic Wrestling Federation. Most of the local wrestlers didn't take Punk or his friends seriously, however, because they weren't properly trained. However, Punk didn't take them seriously because he thought their shows were boring. Punk's shows would be more about having fun and entertaining people than taking everything overly serious. However, Punk started to think if he had made it this far by not knowing how to wrestle, then imagine how far he could make it if he actually did. This thought process would create friction in the Lunatic Wrestling Federation. Unfortunately, Punk didn't have to worry about that friction for too long, as his brother would steal thousands of dollars from the company, forcing it to shut down. This would cause CM Punk to never speak to his brother ever again. CM Punk would prove how serious he was about being a professional wrestler by joining Ace Steel Wrestling School. He would be trained by Ace Steel, Kevin Quinn, and Danny Dominion. He would show up early to take down the Steel Dominion ring and drive to the venue where they were doing a show, climb 3 sets of stairs with the equipment, set up the ring, wrestle, and then do it all over again. He wouldn't be alone in doing this, however. Steel Domain would be where Punk would meet his partner in crime in Colt Cabana. The two couldn't be any more different, but would click instantly due to their love of professional wrestling. They would also have an in-ring chemistry that would take them to places beyond their wildest dreams. During Punk's time with Steel Domain Wrestling, he would be a fast learner on the mic and in the ring, even getting to have a ladder match with Steel Domain trainer Ace Steel. This match was said to be a classic and raised the stakes for Punk in indie wrestling. CM Punk and Colt Cabana's in-ring chemistry would lead to the two doing matches all around town, becoming one of the hottest indie matches out there. Colt Cabana would play the natural athlete, while CM Punk could barely wrestle at all at this point. CM Punk and Colt Cabana would take their matches to IWA Mid-South, where they would both grow as wrestlers. IWA is also where Punk would get the opportunity of a lifetime, getting to have a match with Rey Mysterio Jr. and Eddie Guerrero. Punk thought he was a good wrestler until he stepped in the ring with Guerrero. He was humbled by the match and hoped he would someday be as good as the former ECW legend. Punk and Guerrero would actually remain friends for a long time until his untimely death in 2005. On June 23, 2002, Punk would suffer an injury that would leave him in a crippled state. During a JCW show called the Jersey J Cup, Punk would clash heads against another wrestler named Reckless Youth. To the surprise of CM Punk, this would fracture his skull. The doctor told him he wasn't allowed to do anything strenuous for over a year. CM Punk was back in the ring 2 months later. He flew on the plane, which gave him mind-numbing pain due to the skull fracture. He would get around surprisingly well for a person with a skull fracture, however, and felt like nothing was even wrong with him. One day while driving a car to pick up his sister, he felt ridiculously sharp pain in his skull. Everything was going fast and slow at the same time, and he would start to lose his composure in a restaurant he was eating at. He would force himself out of the restaurant to pick up his sister, and when they got home, he would sleep for 24 hours. He would do this every day for 2 weeks, even at some point sleeping 20 hours a day. Things would slowly start to get better for Punk after his injury scare, and he would be back in the ring shortly thereafter. Punk and Cabana would wrestle each other at 3PW, a promotion ran by the Blue Meanie and Jasmine St. Clair. While working in 3PW, he would also do a one-off match at the notorious wrestling company known as Combat Zone Wrestling. Punk would face Justin Payne in a match that Punk would despise. Punk thought that Justice Payne was terrible in the ring and had no idea what ring psychology was. Angered by the match, he would ask Zandig, the owner of the company at the time, what he thought of the match, knowing what the response would be. Zandig would say the match was shit as well. Punk would blame Justice Payne for the match being shit, to which Zandig would say, "Well, I just don't get what all the hype is about you." This would infuriate CM Punk, who would never wrestle in CZW ever again. While CM Punk's matches in CZW weren't that well received, he would do a series of matches with Chris Hero that would elevate him to an entirely new level. The two would feud in IWA, having matches that would go longer and longer to time limit draws. Similar to Colt Cabana versus Punk, the Punk Hero feud would become the match that everyone wanted to see. This feud would lead to a match at IWA in which they would try to quote-unquote burn the barn down by breaking drywall and literally trying to pull the beams down. This was the final IWA show in a building that was being shut down, so Punk figured they might as well go out with a bang. Due to the notoriety Punk had picked up in his matches against Cabana and Hero, Ring of Honor would reach out to both of them saying they want Punk Cabana for their show as well. One of CM Punk's first feuds in Ring of Honor, however, would be against Raven. The two would have feud of the year, beating the hell out of one another. He would also appear in Raven's flock during his short run in TNA. CM Punk would learn a lot from Raven, claiming that he would teach him how and why to do certain things in the ring. CM Punk considers Raven to be a big mentor early in his career, and everything he learned from Raven would be carried on into his Ring of Honor career. While CM Punk would learn a lot from Raven, he would cement his legacy in Ring of Honor against Samoa Joe in a vicious series of matches that would go down to some of the best in independent wrestling history. CM Punk and Samoa Joe would tear the roof off of Ring of Honor and have a feud that fans would look back on for years when they think of all the great moments in Ring of Honor. In a short period, CM Punk would face the best of the best in the indie circuit, proving himself to the wrestling world that he was here to stay and could beat anyone put in front of him. Ring of Honor would arguably be one of the greatest memories of CM Punk's career. However, before too long, he had found he had done everything there was to do there. CM Punk was a goal-oriented person and found that it was time for him to take the next step in his wrestling career. CM Punk would sign with the WWE in 2005 after a tryout match against Val Venus. Many people thought this meant that Punk was losing his title match. However, to the shock of everyone, he would win the Ring of Honor title, cutting one of the most villainous promos in wrestling history.
And that snake looked that man right in the eye and said, "You stupid old man, I'm a snake." The greatest thing the devil ever did was make you people believe he didn't exist. And you're looking at him right now. I am the devil himself, and all of you stupid, mindless people fall for it. I will not stop until I prove once and for all that I am better than you. That I am better than Loki. That I am better than AJ Styles. I'm better than Samoa Joe. Ladies and gentlemen, the champ is here.
CM Punk would sign the WWE contract on the Ring of Honor title to the dismay of fans. His final match would be against Colt Cabana, in which a teary-eyed Punk would say goodbye. Punk wouldn't leave Ring of Honor as the same man he was when he entered. He was a star now, and everyone wanted a piece of him. However, while CM Punk was dominating the world of indie wrestling, he was about to venture into a world where no matter how good you are, sometimes even the best in the world can't make it there. In 2005, Punk would make his debut in OVW, a developmental territory in partnership with the WWE. CM Punk instantly hated it there. He went from being a megastar in Ring of Honor to obscurity. Modern WWE has changed a lot compared to how things were back in 2005. In 2005, it didn't matter where you came from or what you did in other companies. Joining the WWE was like hitting the reset button and starting over. He would have to work his way back to the top through Ohio Valley Wrestling. Punk would do just that by becoming the OVW television champion. CM Punk would unfortunately rub people the wrong way, however, whether due to his attitude or Paul Heyman simply believing in him. Paul Heyman would put his neck on the line countless times, preventing Punk from being fired or repackaged. Punk would say in an interview that he owes his entire career to Paul Heyman. Punk, however, knew he was on borrowed time and would use his time in OVW to learn things, such as how to edit the shows and other aspects of wrestling television. He would make it his goal to learn as much as he could about the business before he was fired, because as far as he knew, he would never make it to television. In 2006, due to the popular demand and success of the One Night Stand pay-per-views, ECW would be brought back for the Sci-Fi Network. Paul Heyman, being high on CM Punk at the time, would have Punk brought to the brand with plans of finally getting to showcase just how talented he is. Punk would debut in a match against ECW original Just Incredible to a huge ovation. Fans knew who CM Punk was, and he would finally be on a show that would hopefully use him right and highlight all of his abilities. However, people within WWE still didn't believe in CM Punk, and he would be overshadowed by many other wrestlers during his time in the company. Paul Heyman would actually want CM Punk to go over in the Extreme Elimination Chamber, to which WWE would say no. Bobby Lashley, a man who had no business in Extreme Championship Wrestling, a man who was the polar opposite of what ECW was all about, would win the chamber and the title. CM Punk was undefeated in ECW at this point as well. The biggest blow, however, would come to the firing of Paul Heyman by WWE. Paul Heyman was the only security blanket that Punk had, and with this safety net and Paul Heyman finally gone, Punk knew that his time in WWE was bound to come to an end. CM Punk would bide his time, waiting for that fateful day in which he would be fired from the company. However, that day never came. He would get to make his WrestleMania debut at WrestleMania 23 in a Money in the Bank ladder match that he would come up short in. In 2007, he was scheduled to have a title match for the ECW title against ECW original Chris Benoit. This was a match that many fans were looking forward to because this new version of ECW wasn't very good. In fact, it was complete shit. It was less hardcore than an episode of Monday Night Raw, and the in-ring action was all rest holds and slow-paced action, just like you would see in an episode of SmackDown. So seeing a big marquee match with a cult indie fan favorite like CM Punk taking on a legend in Chris Benoit was very exciting. Unfortunately, as you probably know, Chris Benoit wouldn't show up. Chris Benoit would be found dead along with his wife and young son after Benoit would commit the horrific murder-suicide. Johnny Nitro and Punk would have an uneventful match in which once again another wrestler would go over instead of CM Punk. Whether you believe Chris Benoit should be forgotten for being a monster or celebrated for the athlete that he was, in that time period in 2007, in that one moment, CM Punk and Chris Benoit would have stolen the show with that match, and it's a shame that it's one that we will never get to see. CM Punk would finally win the ECW title after having a series of less than stellar matches against John Morrison. After going through the motions in ECW, he would finally get brought to the main roster after winning the Money in the Bank ladder match. He would make his debut on Raw, cashing in Money in the Bank and winning the World Heavyweight title. Punk had done the impossible, going from a hated man on borrowed time to the WWE champion. This was the moment that Punk realized that maybe he actually did have a career going forward in the WWE. However, Punk's first World Heavyweight title run wasn't very good. He would be overshadowed by another feud in Chris Jericho and Shawn Michaels, as well as John Cena being the other WWE champion that people really viewed as the real one. Punk was just a man who just so happened to win the world title, and people within WWE just didn't care. During a backstage segment, Randy Orton with Legacy would assault Punk, leading to Orton punt-kicking him in the head, taking him out of his own world title match. WWE had laid out the red carpet for Punk and completely ripped it out from under him. While this upset Punk and would greatly discourage him, he would continue his career in WWE, winning the tag team titles with Kofi Kingston, and also winning the Intercontinental title against William Regal. Winning all of this gold, CM Punk would become the fastest wrestler ever to achieve the Triple Crown, winning all of the major titles, beating Kevin Nash's old record of 203 days. At WrestleMania 25, to the shock of CM Punk, he would once again win the Money in the Bank. This time he would cash in on Jeff Hardy, leading to a much more successful title reign. Jeff Hardy and CM Punk had more in-ring chemistry and would have several spectacular matches, as well as a feud that would lead to Jeff Hardy retiring from WWE for a while. After Hardy left the company, he would get to prove himself in the ring against The Undertaker. The matches that CM Punk would have against The Undertaker would earn him not just the respect of The Undertaker, but many people backstage in the WWE. After losing the world title to The Undertaker, CM Punk felt like he didn't have much going on, so he wrote 6 months of television and placed it on Vince McMahon's desk. Vince appreciated the initiative and let Punk have the storyline. This storyline would lead to Punk starting the Straight Edge Society, taking inspiration from gospel channels that CM Punk would see on television. He would turn himself into an almost cult-like figure, requiring his disciples to shave their heads and vow their allegiance to him. This storyline would be very successful for Punk. However, WWE would start to change and add things to the storyline, to the point where it didn't even feel like it belonged to CM Punk anymore. In 2010, CM Punk would become depressed in his role in the company. He wanted to be the top guy and felt like he wasn't a valued commodity in the WWE. He would let his contract come closer and closer to expiring, telling Kofi Kingston that he didn't think he could do this anymore. However, Kofi Kingston would be a friend to CM Punk and would talk him into staying in the company. After taking a break from an injury and losing a match at WrestleMania 27, CM Punk would grow more and more bitter towards the WWE. He felt that The Miz was nowhere near his level as a heel, and Punk himself should be main eventing WrestleMania 27. He felt like an afterthought in the company and felt like WWE would rather promote already established superstars like John Cena and The Rock, rather than him or his friends such as Cesaro and Zack Ryder. In 2011, WWE would give CM Punk a loaded gun. They would allow him to go out on live television and air his grievances. Everything that had been building in CM Punk for over 8 years was about to pour out of him on live television. Punk said things that not just resonated with fans, but talent's frustrations as well. He was tired of part-timers coming in and taking spots away from wrestlers. He was tired of not being on advertisements for the show. He was tired of being an afterthought. This promo would elevate CM Punk to godlike status. The biggest villain in the WWE had just become the biggest hero to everyone, and there was no denying it anymore. CM Punk was the best in the world. CM Punk would defeat John Cena for the WWE title during one of the best pay-per-views in the last decade. In his hometown in Chicago, CM Punk would walk through the crowd doing what he said he would do, and walk out of the company with the WWE title. The thing about wrestling that most people don't realize is, it's not always good. You have to sit through a lot of boring shit in wrestling. So when a moment comes along like this, it makes everything worth it, and gives you hope as a wrestling fan that maybe things will get better. While sitting at home with a WWE title in his refrigerator, CM Punk would make it his mission to make WWE watchable again, as well as using his new recognition to get exposure for his friends.
The third part of my question is, when are you going to put Zack Ryder on television? Well, you know where to find me, and I'm sure Stephanie has my phone number, so you can...
It wasn't long until the oversaturation that everyone had become used to would infect CM Punk's Summer of Punk storyline. Triple H would inadvertently enter himself into a storyline with Punk, making himself the special guest referee for CM Punk versus John Cena. This would lead to a match at SummerSlam in which Triple H would beat CM Punk, as well as Kevin Nash returning for no reason. This storyline would blur reality with kayfabe because Triple H and CM Punk didn't like each other in real life, and were constantly at each other's throats backstage. According to CM Punk during the Cult of Cabana podcast, he would describe it like Triple H coming out of retirement just to bury him, and then going back into retirement. Before too long, these storylines would become more about Triple H and his returning buddies than CM Punk, who was on top of the world at this point. The WWE would fail on capitalizing on the Summer of Punk. He would stick around and try to make things worthwhile, having feuds with Chris Jericho and Daniel Bryan respectfully. Punk would win the WWE title and hold on to it for 434 days, becoming the 6th longest reigning champion in WWE's 50-year history. However, Hollywood's bastard in The Rock would put an end to CM Punk's reign, only to lose the belt to John Cena a few months later. CM Punk tried to carry this company on his shoulders, but WWE simply wouldn't allow it, whether due to animosity backstage or them just not seeing him as the face of the company. Even though CM Punk would lose the WWE title, he would get to face The Undertaker at WrestleMania with a streak on the line. Once again, Vince and others backstage didn't think Punk had what it took to have a good match with the Dead Man, but he proved them wrong. However, all Punk wanted to do was main event WrestleMania, and he felt like it was bullshit that Cena and The Rock were main eventing once again, even though the previous year had advertised the match as being once in a lifetime. This frustration would boil within CM Punk. He would put on the best matches, feuds, and storylines, but WWE refused to give him a single thing that he wanted. CM Punk's years between 2013 and 2014 would be a nightmare. He would be sick, tired, and according to an interview in a later court case, crying in between matches. He would have surgery at the end of 2012 for a torn meniscus, and be put into a dangerous TLC match with Ryback a few weeks later. These matches that Punk would have with Ryback would take years off of his life, according to CM Punk. During CM Punk's final run in the company, he would have a feud with Curtis Axel as well as Brock Lesnar, who were both Paul Heyman guys at the time. He would also have less than memorable handicap matches against The Shield and the Wyatt family. The 2014 Royal Rumble would, however, be the final straw. According to CM Punk, he would be working with a staph infection that was so serious that it could have killed him. This would also go undiagnosed by WWE doctors, according to Punk. CM Punk would get a concussion during the Royal Rumble match, alerting the doctors at ringside. However, even though Vince and the rest of WWE staff and Gorilla Position knew about this, they would have CM Punk do an announce table spot. Whether you believe any of CM Punk's stories that he has told about the WWE, this is one moment that I feel would be hard to fabricate. You can see the exact moment CM Punk gets the concussion, as well as him alerting doctors, yet they still allowed him to be put through an announce table. This, along with the staph infection, the negative environment, as well as being sick all of the time, would lead to CM Punk leaving the WWE in 2014. According to CM Punk during the Art of Wrestling podcast, he would state that while he walked out of the company, he never officially quit. However, WWE would fire him on his wedding day. There would be many last straws during CM Punk's long career with the WWE, whether it was treated like shit in OVW or treated like shit as the WWE champion. This would be the final straw for CM Punk. After doing the Art of Wrestling podcast, CM Punk and Colt Cabana would be sued by WWE Dr. Chris Amann. The WWE doctor felt that CM Punk was slandering his name and accusing him of medical malpractice. CM Punk would, however, win the case that would go on for years. However, Punk would lose an unspecified amount of money in legal fees. CM Punk would offer to pay Colt Cabana's legal fees as well, assuming how it was partially Punk's fault that they got into the situation in the first place. However, CM Punk has since refused to pay these legal fees for Colt Cabana, and now Cabana is taking him to court in a case that will happen in the near future. CM Punk would try a lot of different things after his days as a wrestler, some of them successful while others not so much. He would go 0 for 2 in the UFC after losing both fights against Mickey Gall and Mike Jackson. There's a lot that can be said about CM Punk's UFC career. Were his goals as a UFC fighter unrealistic? Yes. Did he show a lot of heart? Of course he did. You have to respect the man who follows his dreams, whether he fails or not. While CM Punk wasn't good as a UFC fighter, he would still become a commentator for Cage Fury Fighting Championships. He would also write and co-write several comic books, as well as star in several TV shows and movies. CM Punk loved wrestling, but wrestling turned his life into a nightmare. While several good things happened to Punk because of wrestling, like him meeting his wife, it would also cost him his friendship with Colt Cabana. It even almost cost him his life at one point. CM Punk would break down crying in court, reminiscing about his days in the WWE. The WWE didn't only kill CM Punk's love of wrestling, they mentally scarred him. He has said in interviews that he has no intentions of ever returning to wrestling, and says that he often even has panic attacks about the idea of it. I know that's not what you want to hear if you're a CM Punk fan, but CM Punk is 40 years old now, happy for the first time in his life, and really has nothing left to prove. CM Punk was right about one thing, however. During his infamous pipe bomb promo, he would say that he's just a spoke on a wheel. There are plenty of talented wrestlers that have been inspired by CM Punk to take the torch away from him. CM Punk doesn't need wrestling anymore, just like wrestling doesn't need CM Punk.